I was so terrified to lose my aunt and uncle because they were my parents, right? I lost my biological parents because they died. I was so afraid to come out because I knew that I would lose them. And I'm gonna get emotional. And I couldn't lose another set of parents. So I just didn't come out because I was so scared. And I suppressed a lot of shame, and I suppressed a lot of joy because I thought I had to just be this heterosexual, religious, Christian woman, and I couldn't really explore my heart.
My parents took me to a priest who just happened to be a therapist, and he sat down and told me that, the way you feel isn't a sin, but the way you choose to act on your feelings is a sin. And he said, you can either live your life in sin and you can go to hell, or you can push those feelings aside and be with a woman, have children, and, be saved in the eyes of God. And that was very traumatic because, especially growing up in the Latin community, you already hear so much about push your feelings to the side. And especially, as a gay man, I knew when I was young. I knew since kindergarten. So there was no pushing any feelings aside or acting out in a way that's different than what's my nature.
I stayed in the closet because it's still frowned upon in the African American community. Just because people are coming out more, or because we're still choosing to, walk in the pride parade, or, come out of the closet and tell our family regardless of the repercussions, there's still major repercussions. I would have to say I deal with more anxiety around my sexuality even today versus what my diagnosis of bipolar is.
So when I started coming out to friends, a lot of friends decided that they didn't want to or couldn't be friends with me. So many of my friends were like, oh, you're so gross, or that's, you're gonna try to do something, or, whatever people used to say. And so my depression deepened, and it became really difficult getting through every single day, especially without having incredibly close friends.
So when we think about representation and when we think about our culture and our experiences, it's really important that we are able to understand the unique experiences of folks who are diverse in terms of their gender or their sexuality. And so while we see a vast increase in the representation of queer and trans folks in media, right? So there are more shows and music and artists, and more people are out than ever before. And yet, on the opposite side of that, we also have never heard more negative messages that have been thrown towards the LGBTQ communities. And so we live and exist in a time where we are experiencing heightened racism, heightened transphobia, heightened homophobia, heightened biphobia. And so we need to understand that if we're thinking about our culture and how that impacts our mental health, we have to be aware of how this bias and this prejudice and this stigma really negatively impacts LGBTQ folks, right? That internalization of those messages really impacts overall well-being.
Being degraded in such a way for something that you can't even control, something that you were ultimately born with, and being made to feel less than because of that. It really just tears at you. And it could really, really make people feel worthless to the point where they do want to take their lives.
LGBTQ young people are much more likely to think about suicide, to have suicidal ideation, to attempt suicide. And when we split out sexual orientation from gender identity, we know that our trans youth and our non-binary youth are much more likely to attempt and to have negative mental health outcomes. And a lot of that stems from bias and prejudice and stigma that exists in the world, right? We internalize and we receive these messages that there's something wrong or bad or different about who we are.
In regards to the LGBTQ community and mental illness, I know that members of the community tend to experience depression, anxiety, PTSD a lot more than the general public because of all the hardships they have to go through. There is also a huge problem with LGBTQ youth and homelessness. That is something that affects disproportionately adolescents in the community.
Once I hit that low point, I knew that I needed help. And because of the way our insurance system works, because of the way the system for mental health in general works, I didn't have the money, being homeless, to go regularly see a therapist, even if it was, an intern that was $35 a week. That's nothing that I was able to be able to afford. I was trying to find stable housing at the time. So I went to Google and I was trying to find any kind of mental health organization that had free services, and I ended up finding NAMI. I ended up joining the young adult support group. I found that I related to folks and I felt more hopeful. I felt like I could be myself, authentically myself, and it was amazing.
One of my favorite aspects of NAMI is our NAMI Connections program, because the power of peers being in a room together, learning from one another and hearing each other's stories and talking about the journeys that they're all on, and hearing someone raise their hand or shake their head and say, "Me too," or give someone a hug and say, like, "Girl, I've been there." It's so beautiful to see and to be a part of.
In our very special LGBTQ plus NAMI Connection Recovery Support Group, it's a brave space where we get together and talk about the unique struggles that we face with our mental health, the differences in getting treatment, the acceptance piece.
So I joined the young adult support group and was just so open about who they are and so welcome and accepting. And so I came back. And I finally found a group where I felt seen and heard, and where I felt capable of exploring myself and encouraged to really share what was going on in my life. And I mean, that group got me through a lot.
When I do share my story and somebody does share that it helped them to want to live or it saved their life, it honestly makes me feel that I am alive for a reason. And every time I thought I wasn't, which was every day leading up to coming to NAMI, it makes that struggle worth it.
Being in a NAMI young adult support group makes me feel like I have more hope, that I'm able to make an impact with other people that have gone through similar struggles, and it makes me feel like I've got a family.
There's nothing like peer support, because you're in a room with all these people that understand your journey and that will accept you and love you no matter what.
It's an honor to me at NAMI that I have a seat at the table and a voice as not just a person living with a mental health condition, but as a gay man living with a mental health condition. And the fact that that is not just accepted at NAMI, but it's welcomed, it means quite a bit to me, and it makes all the difference.
What has worked for me over the years of getting comfortable in my skin, being comfortable with my mental health condition, being comfortable with my sexuality, being comfortable with my skin color, being comfortable with my hair, is the people who I surround myself with. So in turn, over the course of the years of being involved in NAMI, I have been able to put together just a really solid support system who I would say is my chosen family.
When you have the ability to open up to someone so much and they are accepting of you and there's not that stigma, they don't see you as your mental illness, they see you as a person. There's nothing like it. And those are the best friendships, when you have full support from someone and they get it.
Once you're able to tell your story, you just ultimately begin to feel better about yourself. And you also have people that affirm what you're going through because you realize that you're not alone. And then you look up and there's your new ally, but there's your new best friend. Or there's that person that's gonna stand by you while you go and tell your parents that you're gay or lesbian or trans. That's what you need. We need community, people coming together and not being afraid to talk to each other.
What's so great about NAMI and having a community of people that are supportive and are willing to welcome you in with open arms and talk to you and, hear you out. It's important to have a space where I can be heard. I can share my story because it helps keep me grounded. It helps remind me that I'm a survivor.
What NAMI means to me is giving younger generations a better start at life. It means breaking down the stigmas, not just for me, not just for others and my peers, but for the younger people coming up, for the 12-year-old that's sitting in their room thinking that the thoughts going on in their head are normal or that they're different because of it or that they should feel shame. It's starting that conversation so that younger generations know it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask for help. To me, NAMI is being seen. It's validation. It's breaking stigmas. It's being seen as a person, not as an illness.